What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley, coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous Mr. Grant Hughes, who is back after powering through an illness of epic proportions. We are so happy you are here, Grant. We're going to dive into some NBA Finals talk because, hey, why not? The NBA Finals are going on. We haven't heard from Grant since they started. He is here. I can't wait to ask him about it. First and foremost, though, sir, how the heck are you?
It feels weird to be here, Dan. One, because it's past both our bedtimes, 7 p.m. being mine. We're changing up the schedule because we just had to talk. I have no idea what you think about the finals. We haven't talked about it at all. I don't know if we even did much of a run up to them. So this is going to be. I'm excited to get into this with you.
Before we hop in with some of your thoughts, I think my biggest takeaway from the finals so far is that the Pacers are up 2-1. That's probably.
I mean, we'll debate. I don't know if that's actually true. We'll see.
One of the things you had mentioned to me before we hopped on was kind of the adaptability or the physicality or the tactics of the Indiana Pacers. And so, what are you how did they end up here?
Yeah, right. Well, so, okay. Yeah. Right. That's kind of one of my most recurring thoughts, certainly in games 1 and 3, where I don't know. I wouldn't say that I'm rooting for either team. But I find the Pacers kind of more confounding, and because I have a harder time understanding how this is happening, I almost feel like I'm not rooting against the Pacers. It's just this is too weird. I don't understand it. Obviously, we'll get into what's actually happening. But have you had that where it's sort of disbelief? After game 1, for example, oh my God, they did it again, this incredible comeback. Did you find yourself like I did after the fact thinking yeah, they got that one. That's just kind of what they do. But I'm not adjusting my priors. I would just bet the house on OKC winning game 2 by 30. And this is just going to be a 5-game series. Is that where you sort of were?
I was basically there. I thought game 2 was actually going to be closer because I thought there was low-hanging fruit the Pacers could just clean up to keep the game closer to begin with, but that OKC was going to win. And I framed it. I went on a couple shows and said, I think the Thunder could go down 2-0, lose game 2, just completely forfeit home court advantage, and they would still be favored to win this series.
Okay. Well, so game 3 was different, though. Game 2 was kind of all right, order restored a little bit. The Thunder just kind of did more Thunder things and just were physically overwhelming, all the usual stuff. Game 3, it's just kind of okay, now I really can't believe this is happening because, and this is kind of what I wanted to, sort of the core of what I've been thinking most about in trying to compare these two teams and it also does specifically tie to the Haliburton versus SGA. It's not like they're guarding each other all the time or almost ever, but it's they're the two sort of centerpieces of these two teams, and they're so different. And so what I think I'm kind of landing on is Indiana, to me, because of the style they play, which I really do think is just an outgrowth of having Haliburton in the middle of it because of how he operates and thinks and sees the game and the things he wants to do, they have tactical advantages. And I think that partly explains the comebacks. I don't know if anything explains the comebacks, but I'm trying to draw a connection here. But what seems to happen with them, and specifically with Haliburton, is they look for the right play all the time. And that really, Haliburton's that's his core programming is what's the right play right now? And sometimes, and he gets criticized for this, the right play for him is go hide off the ball and don't be involved, because that's just better for the way the defense is scheming, and we're going to get a better shot out of it. Now, he was more aggressive in game 3, took some of what you might call not great shots, which he doesn't tend to like to do. But I think when you compare, and the Pacers are just looking around for how do we get the best shot possible? Mm-hmm. And defensively, it's just different than OKC. What points can we pick at? Where are the pressure points? What's the right thing to do defensively? I know that's broad, but compared to the Thunder and SGA, where it's SGA wants to score and he'll pass the ball. He's not a selfish player, but it's he really is sort of wired to get to his spot and score, and he will pass if the pass is there. I don't get the sense that he is wired the same way Haliburton is, to where the objective of every possession is to get the best possible chance, no matter who who creates the chance, who finishes the chance, what things need to happen leading up to it. And I think that helps me understand why the Thunder can look so lacking in like offensive dynamism sometimes. Game 3 was just like, if SGA is not creating it, shit's not getting created. And now that's like partly an indictment on, well, yeah, like Lou Dort's not creating anything. Alex Caruso, that's not his bag. Jalen Williams, that's been the knock on him forever. Like, you're not going to find a bigger supporter. Jed Holmgren, a hard time creating. Credit Indy's defense, but I do think while the Thunder have massive physical advantages, they're bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic, quicker, more aggressive, generally speaking, especially on defense. The Pacers just kind of like, they're the quintessential, like, let's play the right way. Let's play smarter. And like, that's just working. And it seems more consistent because when the Thunder look great, they look like no team can possibly touch them. And then it's like, how is it possible they just can't score in fourth quarters? Like, and so it's like tactics versus physicality or like talent or something. It's just sort of me trying to get my head around why the Pacers have been able to do this. Does any of that resonate with you? Is it like, I know it's an oversimplification, but I'm just trying to like make broad sense of it.
No, I think the oversimplification is actually how I'm starting to feel, is that the Pacers are just a team of destiny at this point. Because it's just, I think you look at it with Indiana, and I think it gets into, should we be surprised that they're here? And I would count myself, after saying I was out on the Pacers, sure. I feel like we were a little bit in front of during the regular season. Like, no, like, this team is legit. We said they were the third best team in the East, no worse than it, even more so than the Knicks, even though we both picked the Knicks to beat them in the play.
You did. You have to give yourself credit here. I was much slower to come around to the Pacers. I picked the Pacers in any series this whole time.
We both picked them in the first round, I bet, against the Bucks. We had to.
I picked the Bucks. I can't remember.
But
I can't
remember. It's just like, after the first 25 games of the season, they have a top 5 net rating and a top 10 defense, because what was the knock on this team defensively? And so, to your point about Hallie, though, because I want to like actually respond to that, that's really interesting. I don't know that I've thought about it that way, because I think if you look at it, could it be like, are the Pacers just like so much greater than the sum of their parts? And is Tyrese Haliburton the driving force of that? Because you mentioned some of the offensive limitations that OKC can go through. I guess you could say that Indiana's second option is better than any of Oklahoma City's second options offense. At this point, I mean, why wouldn't you? When you look at what Pascal Siakam's been able to do, but it's not like you look at the Pacers and say like, oh, they have another top tier superstar scorer. And it's, as you said, do they even have one because of the way that Haliburton is wired? That's not an insult. This team is deep, it's dynamic, and I think there might just be something to that. And it's also just kind of done in service of really using, I mean, even so, they won by 9 points in game 3. Tyrese Haliburton was a team high 36 minutes and 20 seconds. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That we're talking about this team. I said coming out, the two things I got wrong coming out of game 2, I said that you could probably stand to up some of like the minutes for certain Pacers guys, and maybe you should play TJ McConnell less, is what I said. That's were my exact words. And I think he ended up.
I would have co-signed both. I would have. Yeah, you're right. Of course.
He played 15 minutes and had a trillion steals, though. And I really just, I'm starting, because I've said this about the Thunder with their depth, but I think when you look at Indies, do you think there's maybe something to, okay, yeah, it's Haliburton and the way that he is wired, which I think right now it looks borderline infallible. But then there's like, you go through stretches like game 2 and it's like, could the Pacers have done more to get him shots? Can he be more aggressive? But then he has hit these insane shots throughout the playoffs. And so someone who has the ability to toggle between kind of those existences, even if the one that I think is the low-hanging fruit, like why can't he score more or be more aggressive as a shot taker, feels like it doesn't come naturally to him, like you said. But, like, who's the last player? Because that's not, you're right, that's not the way that Shai is wired. He's the MVP, and we both love Shai. He's the second best player in the NBA, quite frankly. But, like, there's just something that feels a little bit more dynamic about the way that you can build your team or play your team around Tyrese Haliburton. That's not to say that I think Shai is limiting, but the way that the Thunder have kind of built their team, like, it's almost like, I mean, what would Indy be without Tyrese Haliburton? Yes, we can ask that question. But the Thunder are so uncomfortably reliant on Shai as just like the scorer. And it's like with Indy, it's if Tyrese Haliburton's going to take 13 shots in a game, that's actually okay.
Right. No, I think and this touches on something, tying two things together. You mentioned Siakam has been like, Another credit to you. You've been in on Siakam so much harder than me for so much longer. I think he's great. He's an all-star player, but like,
yeah, I mean, the Warriors and the Kings should be like shamed to hell for like, no, like Pascal Siakam's not the guy we want to go after. And by the way, very quickly with that. Oh no, actually, go ahead. I was gonna have Siakam at the 5 in this series has just been like destroying worlds. I was just gonna mention.
No, we can kind of stay on Siakam because it gets to something I want to talk about, because I think the disparity in offensive dynamism is very clear, and I've attributed a lot of that to Haliburton versus SGA and how they play and how the supporting cast fit around those two guys. In the early stages of Game 3, Siakam got, I don't know how many they were, 3 or 4. It seemed like 10, just not open, but like very concerted efforts to enter the ball to him around the free throw line, because that was the soft spot, and he had a mismatch half the time, and he was hitting tough like turnaround or like kind of ISO jumpers around the elbows. I think it was all in the first quarter, and so I found myself thinking, because I'm still just so reluctant to give the Pacers credit, I was like, you know what, the Thunder are smart, because they're going to say if Pascal Siakam's going to beat us with 16-foot contested jumpers in isolation, we'll just tip our hat. And it's like, but the Pacers diagnosed that like that's where we can eat for a minute until the Thunder adjust, and they did that, and those points all still counted. That wasn't how the Pacers won, but they banked all those points by doing the smart thing and having scouted what the Thunder were doing, and Haliburton is part of that, exploiting the way that the Thunder were defending. And I like, is Mark Daigneault just getting badly outcoached? Because like we agree, we've just anointed him. He's been a great coach all year. We love, how do you get guys to defend this hard? That's all part of it. But like, I don't think there's any argument to be made that Daigneault has coached a better, like has put out better tactics offensively, has deployed his players more intelligently than Rick Carlisle has. Just like the talent disparity is still, I don't care. It's still on the side of the Thunder. It's like they just have more talent. Just if you're like lining guys up and you're picking teams. But the Pacers just put it all in the right place way more often, and they change what they're doing way more often. Now, I'm sure there's great X's and O's people out there that will tell me I'm wrong, and the Thunder have made a million adjustments, and like for whatever reason it's not working. I just know when I'm watching, it's way harder to figure out where the Pacers are going to get you from, because it keeps changing and it's like situationally based, than it is for the Thunder. And that's just, SGA is just trying to get his. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like that's what the offense is. It basic, like way in down the stretch of that fourth quarter in Game 3, it's not 1-4 flat, but it's like corners and wings, and SGA is trying to beat his guy, and maybe there's a screen and maybe there's not, and it's just like, it's not quite super heliocentric, but it's close enough that you can't get away with that all the time against a smart, well-coached team that on the other end is going to hit you from angles you're not expecting. It's just like, we got to give it up to Carlisle, I guess, right? Because it's not just, Haliburton plays this way, SGA plays this way, and Haliburton's is working better. It's coaching, it's the lineups, it's everything. The Pacers just seem like they've had real advantages in all those areas.
It does seem like Carlisle, at least for this series, has had a better feel of like what types of lineups or who to roll with when you're looking at. I mean, like Ben Shepherd in Game 3. Like, yeah, you come out, you go slow down Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
right,
and
just
then
tire him out for 6 minutes at a time.
And also just like making Shai work on defense. Like, I think that's been a big thing. And another part too is I very rarely come away like just wondering like what was Mark Daigneault like thinking. But after Game 1, I wonder why they didn't set screens for Shai like higher on the floor. They did that in Game 2. Then he's struggling to create separation in Game 3, and is like, at that point, set screens in the backcourt for him if you have to. Just if you're going to put the ball in his hands that much, or that's the basis of your offense, why can't you do that? And the other thing I'm still sort of puzzled by, and this isn't to say that the dual big lineups have been killer for them, but like, why isn't this an Isaiah Hartenstein series? Like, are we just gonna, every time he like picks up a foul, because like you're worried? I'm sorry, Obi Toppin's been great like kind of at both ends of the floor this series, but if that's like that's the response, it's just like, oh, Obi Toppin, like we don't know if we I just don't, that doesn't sit right with me. And I think that we're talking about screening for Shai, like I think it's Isaiah Hartenstein is pretty clearly not just their best screener, but like, if you're looking for someone to make a decision off the catch out of those screens, I just maybe it's his frame, maybe it's just his vision. Like, I'm trusting him to do that more than Chet. Yeah, if I want a jumper hit, yes, I will trust Shai Gilgeous up. I'll trust Shai more, but I would trust Chet Holmgren more than I would Isaiah Hartenstein. But he just feels too critical to what they're able to do offensively. And you look at all this defensive talent, and are the Pacers really going to find a way to exploit you because you played Hartenstein more than 18 minutes in a game? I've been pretty perplexed by that.
I have too, and I wonder, just thinking of this now, like, do you think, because I feel like the Pacers, some of the lineup choices they've made have felt like, oh, that feels like a risk. Like Siakam at center, that feels like, I don't know, man.
Like the bench mob lineups,
You're just like, boy, that's a flex, like, or it's just like that feels desperate. But I wonder if because coming into this series, the Thunder were such overwhelming favorites that the Pacers are just like, fuck it. What do we got to, let's stick with this. If it doesn't work for 5 possessions, we'll keep going. Whereas like with the Hartenstein stuff or I'm trying to think of other examples, but like the Thunder, they feel like almost tight sometimes where it's like, that didn't work. We can't stick with that. Like, or they're just like, they're thinking about the limitations of lineups as opposed to like, well, how can we just get huge advantages? I don't know, something about like just prohibitive favorite status, which is out the window now because you're down 2-1. But like, it does feel like there's less willingness to just try stuff. It's almost like we're so good that we should just be able to rely on like what we've done well all year, which is not like an insane approach, right? Like you win 68 games and you put up these monster margins in the playoffs. Like you probably do want to kind of like have the mindset of like, let's stick to what works. But like every series is different and they only get harder and they only demand more like creativity. And I wonder if maybe the Thunder are like a little too hesitant to like change things up. I don't know. Like look, I'm just flailing. I'm searching. Also, can I say now that like if the Thunder just win the next 3 games by 25 points apiece, like that won't be a shocking result. Would you believe that if you fast forwarded a couple weeks and that's how it happened?
I would believe it. I think at this point you could sell me on any outcome. Though you could tell me that the Pacers 1-5 at this point. I'd be like, you know what? I still think the Thunder are going to win this series because I'm still just kind of dealing with that larger sample size and the pinnacle we've seen from the Thunder, where it's just they can run roughshod over anyone. And the Pacers don't have that level. Like they're more of the scrappy, come from behind and just barely eke out these victories teams, or they'll take care of business, kind of like we saw but they've led for what? 10% of the minutes in this series. I'm not even trying to denigrate them. It's just, can Oklahoma City ever sustain the peak that we know that they have? And we've had underlying questions here about the offense specifically, but I also kind of, we're mentioning all these adjustments that they haven't made, or why aren't they trying to do this? I'm assuming you'll probably get like more even offensive performances from J-Dub at some point, but I really just think Mark Daigneault is going to start pushing more buttons the rest. I don't know how you don't.
You better.
Like after the way. Yeah, you better.
You can't go back home down 3-1.
Couldn't you look at it and say like of the, what have they played? So they've played like 140, 6 minutes of the series, and I think the Thunder have led for like 130 minutes or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
Could you just look at it and say like, no, like that'll win out? Like you're kind of dealing with small enough sample sizes to where it doesn't matter. But I am, and this probably comes across as disrespectful to the Pacers, but like I'm sort of just amazed that we're here. When you've watched the games, like yes, it made like game 1 doesn't. None of the Pacers comebacks make any sense. This is insane. But like they're so good, but I just wouldn't have predicted that like they're not favored to win the series right now. But I had the Thunder in 5, and I said when I picked them that I was more tempted to go with Thunder in 4 than the Pacers in 6. And that's just for someone who considers, like, I really do try and like think critically most of the time about this and consider myself higher on the Pacers than most. Just for me to be continuously wrong, I picked them to lose against the Cavs. I picked them to lose against the Knicks. I picked them to get trucked by the Thunder. Like, yeah, okay, I'm an idiot, but this team's also really special.
Yeah. No, I still think the Thunder will and should win the series, but whatever happens, it's like you just sort of have to give it up because I do think the Pacers, not to take anything away from the Thunder, because like the way they're built and like the way their cohesiveness and all this stuff, like that's laudable. We should root for that kind of thing. The Pacers are just like even more so because they're not supposed to be here. They didn't tank they want to be in the middle for a while. How unambitious. And they're just here. And the way that they play and the way Haliburton plays is like, it's everything you should want. Like he's this like preternaturally unselfish superstar that just wants to make the right decision and create the best shot for everybody, whoever it is. And it's like that sort of it's very Steve Nash, and like I'll just die loving Steve Nash forever. Like everything about how he plays is just my favorite thing. And Haliburton does feel like sort of an evolutionary version of that.
The villain arc of Steve Nash, right?
I guess, I don't know. But we should be rooting for the Pacers, right? Like, aren't the Pacers just everything you should want? They're an underdog, like all this other stuff. And I guess maybe we got to talk about what's ahead. I mean, insofar as anything is predictable about this series, but like, I don't know. I find myself wanting the Thunder to win because that makes sense to me, and it would align with like how I understand the league. But like, shouldn't I want the Pacers to win because that's way cooler, and I like so much of what Haliburton represents?
I root for chaos, which means that I probably should be rooting for the Pacers, but I'm so I really don't have a rooting interest in this other than like, I feel like we were in front of the Thunder before they were actually really good, and where everyone's like, oh, this is despicable. It was like, oh, no, like they're going to be fine. But I find myself fearing the discourse around Oklahoma City if they lose this series. And so when you're talking about saying it helps you understand the game, it also kind of rooting for the Thunder is evading, because you can't, if there's anything, just, the Pacers need to break it up or they need to go trade for Giannis right now because they lost to the Thunder team in a minimum of 6 games. No, STFU, if anyone's saying that. So I like, but that's it. I think I'm more so, it's uncomfortable, but in a really fun way, to where I don't feel like I have a great hold on this series anymore. And I came in, I thought I had a great hold on what was going to happen. Even after game 1, this stuff is, but yeah, I like and loathe that feeling at the same time, if it makes any sense.
So looking ahead, do you think that Oklahoma City will find ways to more consistently generate offense, particularly like down the stretch of games? And if you do, what does that look like? Because that's the core issue right now, is like just late in 2 of these games, they've gone cold and they've lost.
What does that look like? I do expect it to hit at some point. And I think J-Dub showed flashes in game 3 that we hadn't really seen through the first 2 games of the series. And I do think that what it's probably going to look like, and maybe that's a win for Indiana, I do feel like their late game offense is going to be more variable. To where you're not as like, and by the way, I guess you could say it was variable in game 3 because didn't Shai take 1 shot in the 4th quarter? I just feel like they need to find a way to give him more like offensive in-game breaks. To where, and I think that's going to come back to like, well, what is the secondary cast doing? And I don't know if that means, what did Aaron Wiggins have, like 9 fouls in 8 minutes or something in game 3? Like, can you get more out? Because like that's someone you're looking for a scoring punch. This doesn't feel like it's an Isaiah Joe series. He comes in game 3 and the Pacers are immediately going after him. I think what it's going to look like is they're either going to figure out a way to get more separation for Shai, or there's just going to be more variability to their attack when you're looking like especially down the stretch in a way that's by design and not necessarily like forced or coaxed by the Pacers. And look, another thing, we haven't mentioned it, they had a lot of like kudos to TJ McConnell on the Pacers defense, but like they just had a lot of like brain farty turnovers. The Thunder did in game 3. I think Shai even said something about it. Like, you can't 3 pickpockets by TJ McConnell out of the inbound. Like, come on, you can't. You're the Thunder. You can't do that.
He want like what like. How many
after
seconds,
the first one? Like maybe think about it.
That, and like how many seconds into the TJ McConnell like scouting film does someone come on it and say like, hey, and tap on the screen and say he tries to steal the ball in the backcourt, dummies. Like, pay attention. He's gonna do that. Like that's so yeah. Unforced errors, I think, is the term that all the Thunder guys kept using. And yeah, like that's if TJ McConnell gets backcourt steals, that is an unforced error because you should know that's what he's trying to do like all the time. I think I agree with you that just almost by default, the Thunder's offense has to start looking more variable and dynamic. Like they got to know that it can't just be an exhausted SGA with a screen or not trying to get to a spot and make something happen. And I just think like you have to have Jalen Williams be hyper aggressive, like for more than the opening minutes of, I think it was the 3rd quarter in game 3 where he got to the basket like 3 times in a row. And it's like, that's an element this team really needs, if only because SGA doesn't have to do anything when Jalen Williams is playing like that. And maybe that is all it takes for him to have another 90 seconds of wind at the end of the game. Like, it just, somebody else run the show, be aggressive, bend the defense, create a shot just a few more times in the first 42 minutes of the game. And maybe that's just the difference. And that's all. That's enough for the Thunder to hold on and stave off Indy runs or comebacks. Defensively, I still think there's going to be, you could say it was game 2, but I do think we're going to get another Thunder game where it's like they forced how many turnovers, they created how many fast break points off those, where they just win a game like that. Because I think that's more likely, in fact, than the Thunder suddenly looking like, the 7 seconds or less Suns on offense. I think they're going to have a game where defensively they just do they are who we thought they were kind of thing. And if they could do that more than once the rest of the series, then you feel really good about the Thunder's chances. But defensively, I think that's where it's got to happen. But I agree, like, if the Thunder can't,
and don't they
just
look
get
like
something going.
This is so unscientific, but I don't know that I've ever watched multiple Thunder games with it. I don't know if I watched a single Thunder game this year before this series, come away thinking, man, they look gassed. And just in the fourth quarters where it's like they're averaging a point per possession on offense for the fourth quarter. And this is the bigger one. Indy in the fourth quarter is averaging 1.42 points per possession.
You're going to win a lot of quarters if you're doing that.
Right. And I just, like, I'm watching the Thunder defense. It's like, yeah, like they can still be exhaustive, but they look exhausted. And I don't know when the last, I think it's, look, if you watch the Pacers, like, away from the ball in the half court when they're actually in it, or just the idea that have the Thunder ever faced a team that will look, and they haven't done it all series, like, the Pacers will look to run after these makes. Yep. Like, that's what they were able to do that in game 1 some, and then I feel like they were really able to do that in game 3. So maybe that's just putting, like, a pressure point on the Thunder defense they haven't really had to reconcile with just yet. But that's just, like, that's what just makes it so uncomfortable. Is I'm fine with adjusting my priors, but it's so hard to project forward in this series other than to say that I am excited and we're getting a hell of a series. That feels like, it's going at least 6, and at this point I kind of expect it to go 7.
I know, and I hope it does, just because I want more of this. It's been awesome so far. It's been surprising. It's been revealing in good and bad ways about both of these teams. Mostly good for the Pacers, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's been great, and this is not what I expected. I thought this series was going to be pretty lame and over quickly, and it has been neither of those things.
All right, let's do 45 minutes on the ratings talk now.
Don't care.
Are you ready to take us out of here unless you have anything else to add?
Thanks, everybody. No, I think we've spoken plenty. It'll all be dated by the time this goes up anyway, so whatever. Glad to talk to you about this. Glad to be listened to and watched if you're doing that. And if you would like to do that, rate, review, subscribe, join our Discord. Make sure if you're checking this out on YouTube, let us know what you think is. 1, let us know what you think's happening, because we clearly don't know. And 2, let us know what you think is going to happen for the rest of this series. It's been so long since I've done an outro, I can't remember. Join our Discord. I think I said that. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jarrett Allen.